there is a very important spoiler to a very important cliffhanger at the end of the season.
Right.
That they gave out. It really felt special. Hello and welcome to Road Goes Ever On and On. Today, Mark and I are talking about Silo Season 2. We were at Comic-Con and we want to talk about the panel in Ballroom 20 that we watched. So, light spoilers ahead, although this is stuff that they were okay with sharing with us, so we think it is things okay to share with you. If you are enjoying our videos, a like would be appreciated. If you don't want to miss a single one of our videos, especially when it comes to the upcoming season of Silo, then just be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon for notifications so you don't miss a single video. And with that, let's start off with kind of overall impressions of the panel. What did you think of the panel as a whole?
I thought the panel was great. We got the author of the books was the first one introduced for the panel.
Yes.
Hugh Howey.
Yep.
We had the creator of the series for Apple TV,
Mm-hmm.
Graham Yost there. We had producer and lead actress Rebecca Ferguson. And then we had Common come out, and also moderated by Adam Savage, which was a delight to have as well. The panel was great. They seemed like a really bonded group.
Yeah.
And that really care about this project that they're doing with Silo and how much fun they're having creating this series. And I really enjoyed it because it felt very welcoming.
It also felt like they were bringing out the big guns and not just like the press tour was split up and it's like, Rebecca, you do this thing, and you do this thing. It felt like they had most of the major players. You could say that maybe we're missing Tim Robbins.
Yep.
But other than that, I feel like we had the major players, and they showed a huge clip from the first episode. So they really gave the people something that they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They had, somebody great moderating it. It felt like they really wanted to, and they were in one of the big rooms,
Yeah.
Other than, I don't actually know the full spectrum of rooms, but
Ballroom 20 is the second biggest to Hall H.
so definitely bringing out the big guns in terms of wanting to get to a lot of eyeballs and bringing big people in.
Yes.
How would you compare it to some of the other stuff that we saw in Comic-Con?
Yeah, so I would say this is probably the biggest panel we saw.
We did see some other ones in Ballroom 20, including the Masquerade. So we did see some other big ones.
Right, we saw some other big things, but to me, I feel like we saw like a Family Guy panel and an American Dad panel, waiting for this panel to make sure that we could see it. And they were really cool, but I do feel like this one felt like more special. Like we saw from the Family Guy and the American Dad panels, like clips, like funniest clips from their upcoming season. But this was like a cool tease. We got the release date of when Silo 2 Season 2 is coming out, November 15th, which
So excited.
you better believe we will be covering that as it comes out. So stay with us as we do breakdowns of those episodes.
Yeah, of the shows that we watched, of the panels that we went to, I think that this one was the one that I think had a lot of lingering questions, and therefore the fact that they actually gave us something that hasn't been released up to this point, which does answer some questions. There is a very important spoiler to a very important cliffhanger at the end of the season.
Right.
That they gave out. It really felt special. Versus, so like before that, the two of the three panels before that were for cartoons. So it was Futurama. It was Family Guy, and it was American Dad.
Right.
And those, there's no like big cliffhangers, anything like that. So it's not like people are hanging on as far as like what happens. Yes, if you love those shows, you could feel like there's a void missing, and it's like, oh, I can't wait until the show comes. But there's no like unanswered questions. They were just, in addition to the interviews, they showed clips, like montages of some funny moments. Versus this actually felt like we were getting something truly meaningful.
Right. Before even the footage we got, we had some insight of what season 2 is going to showcase. So we know that, and spoilers ahead from this point on, if you do not want to be spoiled for season 2 of Silo, come back when we start doing Silo. But we find out right away that there is a Silo program.
Yes.
Multiple silos.
Yep.
We did get that view of the extra silos at the end of season 1, but now we have it confirmed that it was all part of a project.
Yeah.
We learn that our main character, Juliet, who is outside of the silos, we see her we find out that the season 2 will be running 2 stories. The people in Silo 18, such as Common and Tim Robbins, characters dealing with the repercussions of what happened with Juliet, and then Juliet out in the world, and alluded to maybe meeting a new cast of characters that she is going to interact with. So we do know that she survives.
Yeah, it was interesting the way that was alluded to, because I feel like part of the panel was them dancing around what they could and couldn't say. Mm-hmm. And I think that Graham Yost, the creator of the show, kind of said it best when he seemingly looked off to the side as if there was somebody from Apple TV Plus, possibly with like a dart gun.
Yeah, ready to trank them at any moment.
And said something about we have to be careful about what they will let us say.
Yes.
And so there was this funny dance, and I think that 2 kind of interesting moments with that. We saw the moderator, Adam Savage, start to say a question and then realize that it was going to give away too much. And so he started to try and rephrase it. Graham Yost kind of jumped in to try and help him out. And then there were also interesting moments where, and I think attached to that same question, to Rebecca Ferguson, Graham was worried that the answer might also give a little too much away, and he kind of jumped in. So there was this delicate dance. It seemed like Adam Savage had been on set.
Yeah.
I don't know if he saw more of the footage than we saw.
I think
he seemed privileged.
It felt like he had already seen season 2. I don't know how much he's working on it.
Maybe it was unfinished, or yeah.
Yeah, he has a lot of pull in the movie sets and creating special effects for movies, and so he was even mentioning that he knew a lot of people on the set,
right,
and was able to go to the set and was just in awe of what the set looked like, of how amazing the set is.
Was it him or one of the others that talked about, it might have been him or the author that talked about the scale of the set and the fact that this was one of the top 3 kind of largest, most immersive sets?
That was actually a special guest that came out.
Okay,
said that, but we will get to that.
We'll get to that.
One thing I really enjoyed about the panel and made me love the actor more, Common. In Silo, he does such a wonderful performance of being this terrifying bad guy, and hearing him talk about the show and how much he loves being on the show, and how different of a character is, because Common is a very anti-establishment, anti-system person, and then being a character that is completely for the system and for the good of the Silo, and how much fun and how challenging it was for him to be that person just made me love his performance even more, and love how excited he was about the show.
Absolutely. And I think that having him take that role, I think gives it interesting perspective, and he does a great job of humanizing the moments where you see him start to question the good of the many versus the good of the few.
Right.
Because when we see him, he's definitely all in, but there is a moment with his family that kind of makes you realize that he does doubt it, at least for a moment, is struggling with that. He did even hint at, when they were talking about the 2 different storylines, I think he did say the word revolt. Ooh. So I think that...
where he was talking about dealing with the repercussions of the people in the Silo.
Or revolution, I think is the word he used. So I think that maybe losing, 2 sheriffs in such a short period of time is going to lead to something.
And one of the sheriffs making it over the hill, which has never been done.
Right. Yeah. Which then makes you want, can you go outside?
Right. That might you know, if I saw somebody make it over the hill, like maybe outside's not so bad. Why are we in this Silo project?
Yeah. I think it's interesting doing the two simultaneous storylines because I feel like this show will give you something and then just leave it for a long period of time. You know, it was very early in the show that we got the fact that there's a door down at the very bottom by the water, and then we just haven't touched that.
Yep.
And it feels like there's going to be a lot that comes up from two parallel storylines that are not going to be able to kind of communicate with each other. But I think at some point they will be important, whether or not that's season 3 or the end of season 2.
I do think the storylines will merge at some point.
100%.
Yeah.
I think they'll merge, and I'm kind of curious when. This show feels like it takes its time with things.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and but while we're still talking about like the non-spoilery stuff. Another part of why I loved Common was he killed it at the end with a rap to take it all out, and it was great. It tied in a comment that the author said. Actually, I think Hugh brought it up, the creator, but it was the author's original words.
Yeah.
Which is that it's probably like a tagline for one of the books, if not like the series of books.
Yes.
If the lies don't kill you, the truth will.
And from there, Common just started riffing and just boom, boom, including everybody on the panel, including the moderator.
San Diego Comic-Con and San Diego, and the date that it was, and
Adam
then
Savage.
Yes.
And also promoting the new season of Silo 2 in it. And it was, I wish I could remember it word for word, but it was such an amazing moment, and just experience Common just, it felt off the cuff, but it could have been scripted, but this is like what he does. So it just flowed, and it was incredible.
It was a moment of magic, and I absolutely love that. It felt like the panel gave us a number of things. Like, it gave us some insight into the passionate people behind it. It gave us some actual content to be super excited about that nobody else had. And it felt like it had unscripted kind of magic that really made it one of the most memorable, if not the most memorable, of the panels that we went to.
Definitely memorable for me. I quite enjoyed it. Is it time to get into the really spoilery footage of what we saw?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me frame this, and then you can dive in. So what we got wasn't an uncut trailer.
Nope.
It actually seemed like the footage we got was completely edited, or edited well enough that it seemed completely edited. So it did seem like polished footage, and it was an entire uncut scene from, we were told, the end of the first episode, towards the end of the
first episode.
So a big chunk of, how long would you say it was?
Maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah,
somewhere in that range.
A decent chunk. And with that,
we see Juliet inside of a different silo. This silo looks abandoned. This silo looks
not just abandoned, but like
broken down.
Yes.
There is bridges that are broken of the spiral. We see bodies of people from the silo.
It seems abandoned.
That there's nobody here. It seems like this is a place that Juliet has taken refuge in. And we see that, and Graham Yost was talking about before, like how we see Juliet in her peak moment of engineering. You know, she is the engineer. She's great at solving problems and fixing things. And we get to see a little moment of her engineering in the silo, trying to cross a walkway. And she, builds this bridge that is kind of long, that she has to use a pulley to lift up and lay over the side. She has, tied up pieces of it. It looks not the best, but it's solid enough for her to cross. She begins to cross. The bridge breaks a couple times. She also tied a rope to herself in the event that she was to fall. So
Yep.
she had a little bit of a harness on. But then, the bridge does collapse under her as she makes it across. She does make it across, cuts the rope, the bridge falls, and then we hear music.
Yeah.
It is an eerie song. It sounds a little old-timey. I don't know the exact song that played.
Yeah, I don't remember that detail.
But it was old-timey. It felt the vibe of Juliet being alone in this scary world. She's walking through halls, across bodies, and she finds a door where this music is coming from. And she tries to open the door and is unsuccessful. And then we get a moment. We see eyeballs pop up, and the eyeballs the eyeballs basically tell her, hey, you just tried to open this door. Please don't do that. If you do it again, I will kill you. And that's the end of the footage. That's all we get. And we find out the eyes are new coming actor to the show, Steve Zahn.
Yeah. And then there had been an empty seat that didn't have a name placard in front of it. Steve came out carrying his name placard, put that down so that he could join the panel. And they did kind of describe him as like a childlike adult.
A 10-year-old in like a 45 to 50-year-old man's body. He's been alone for a very long time.
Yes. And I think before they had mentioned him and they were talking about Rebecca Ferguson's engineering skills, I feel like, and maybe I was wrong, I feel like they alluded to the fact that she was going to have to do different types of engineering this time, as in like possibly emotional or like dealing with not just physical problems that she's used to.
Right. She's good at engineering mechanical problems, and she might have to engineer a
person or a group or something
conflict that she might have to manage that. And
and we've seen that she's not necessarily great with people.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be quite a challenge for her. So I'm excited about that.
And that's what Rebecca Ferguson said her character was. She's like a socially awkward, like she's playing her as a socially awkward character that doesn't do well in relationships, and that's why she's so good with the engineering of mechanicals. And so now she's going to be completely out of her element in this new season. And also what you had said earlier about the top 3 set, Steve Zahn, who is a veteran actor, he's a very underrated actor in my opinion.
Yeah.
He, like every time I see him in a role, he disappears in it. He is very talented, and he is the one that said that top 3 sets of all time with the new season.
Yeah, and that was in terms of like scope, which I think is actually kind of funny because when you think about it, they work so hard to help make Silo feel so confined. And I get, like, it is a large building, but it does feel like cramped.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting that the set itself is also big, because it'd be easy to break that into a lot of small kind of cramped sets and then just use a little bit of CGI to put them together when you need to see like the different layers. So interesting to hear that large parts of that world were created on kind of a bigger scale.
And that was even just for the first season of Silo, and then we have a whole new set that was built for where Steve Zahn's character is. So another giant set. So it seems like they have a ton of huge sets for this upcoming season that we're pretty excited for. Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. But I think our journey has come to an end with this special update of Silo Season 2 coming to you. Like I mentioned earlier before, Sterling and I will be covering this live as it comes out, episode by episode. So join us back then, November 15th. That is when we will be covering this. I'm Mark. This is Sterling.
Thanks.